Welcome back, everybody, to me finishing Lord of Chaos. Yes, I'm done with it. Actually, I was done with it last night, but I only got to record the video now, so here we are. I'll try to talk about the last couple of chapters, and then I'll try to give some general thoughts on where this is all going at this point, and yeah. We'll do that, and then I'll do fun things over the weekend. And we're back with a Crown of Swords on Monday, and I plan to finish the entirety of Crown of Swords in 1 week. We'll see how well that goes. Who knows? I have no hope at this point, but there we are. Let's do this, shall we? Cheers. So yeah, we're nearing the end. Basically, one half of what I spoke about happens, the other half just doesn't happen. So we have Rand having stuff going down with the Aes Sedai. And on the other hand, we have, Matt and Elaine and Nynaeve hang around in Ebudar and nothing happening. So we won't talk about that today. It's boring. They just go there. Matt goes drinking, trying to find out what the others are doing. The others are just doing their crap on their own, and that's about it. There's nothing much going on there. Yeah, Elaine frees, what's his name, Logain, so Logain can flee before Arangar, who is, that dude from, I guess, Eye of the World? One of the two, but I have no idea which one. Can get Logain killed, and then that dude, Arangar, who is now a woman, and we'll talk about that bit sooner than later, I think. I mean, maybe we can start talking about it, but point is, frees Mogideon, who then goes to Shayol Ghul, because everyone has to go to Shayol Ghul, I assume. So, let's do a quick one on the Arangar thing. Arangar, while now having the appearance of a woman, is still at heart a man. This is sort of the where we could probably get transphobia out of it if we want to, but that's why I want to stay with it a while longer, because basically what we find there is that while she is now has the appearance of a woman, they still use the male half of the source. They are still using Sidene, so their soul, their essence, is still male, which I don't know is a good look. But I want to keep that one for later. Just point out that I've noticed it, and I think it's a problem. Well, let's talk about the other stuff, shall we? Right. Well, as I said, the Ebudar stuff doesn't make any sense, but it's just the usual cultures not making sense, the whole thing being kind of, all over the place, but nothing happening kind of thing. And that's sort of my largest problem with it, is that that entire chapter, I keep forgetting what it's called. Weaves of Power, something like that. It's chapter 52, I think. Or 51. No, 52. That entire chapter is unnecessary. You could just drop the entire thing. Nothing really happens there. Yeah, they disguise themselves with magic. And now wandering around, and there's maybe some sort of conflict going down between Elaine and Nynaeve, but I'm not quite sure, and that's it. And well, whatever. I don't care. I think the only interesting thing is that one pale-haired seeker, are they seekers, for the Shanshan is in town and is preparing something new for the Shanshan, which I guess we sort of learned at the beginning of either this one or maybe already Fires of Heaven, when we had that short bit about the Shan-Chan collecting. I think that's maybe the smart planet. So I'm guessing here, right? In Ebudar, there's a bunch of sea folk ships out there that are not entering the harbor, and we remember that earlier bit. Like as I said in like one of the prologues, I think Fires of Heaven, that the Shan-Chan are collecting all those sea folk ships out there on like somewhere. I assume that like beginning of next book, the Shan-Chan will come out of those sea folk ships and attack and overcome what's the place called? Ebudar, with Elaine and Nynaeve stuck bang in the middle of it. I assume, because they're not yet done. And this is an odd bit, I feel. I'm already all over the place. It's an odd bit because that plotline, that entire plotline around Nynaeve and Elaine and that weird like weather control bowl, it just goes nowhere in this book. It just like ends on like not even a high note. It's like so far up to this point, while I did not like the endings much and thought like the climactic battles usually sucked because, well, let's face it, I think most of the things in these books really suck. But like, while that was the case, and they sometimes even felt like forced when like everyone had to show up at the same place for like a final battle and whatnot, at least like there was some form of conclusion of like plot lines at the end of the books. And this is not the case here. It's like it just goes nowhere. It's like, yeah, Elaine and Nynaeve are back there doing nothing. Egwene is moving towards Tar Valon with her army. All right. I mean, it feels almost like in transit, and it would probably have worked just as well if you cut the plot line, like the Matt, Elaine, Nynaeve, Egwene plot line, at the point where Matt leaves with Nynaeve and Elaine towards Ebudar, and Egwene leaves apparently towards Tar Valon. You just cut those chapters and you would not lose something. Or you could just move them to the next book and make the next book more about that side of the story and just finish this one a couple of chapters early. And focus just on the Rand side of things. That would have totally worked. I mean, time's already messed up, so you don't have to worry about like it all happening at the same time or whatever. You could just like drop that. Like that's probably, if I were to edit these books, that's what I would do, is like move those chapters, that whole plot line. Like the chapter was like Weave of Power, and those bits later on about like Egwene and whatnot. Leaving with the Band of the Red Hand following her. Take all of those chapters out and move them towards the beginning of the next novel, and focus the next novel more on that side of things. All right, now let's talk about the rest of the things, right? So the plot line is basically Rand gets trapped by Elidas Aes Sedai, who then drag his arse all the way back, or try to drag his arse to Tar Valon, using all kinds of like very effective torture, which is like, beating people, because that's always what will work. Perrin and gang try to follow to save him, and then he saves himself, and Mazrim Time shows up with the Black Tower dudes, the Ashaman, who then mow down thousands of Shido with magic. All right. That's basically the plot. It's not much. Oh, plus weird jealousy things with Berelain and Fael. And that's sort of what I want to start talking about, because I still have a problem with Fael. Not Fael, I mostly have a problem with the way Berelain is treated. Because it's basically, once again, it's all slut-shaming. It's like, Berelain is obviously doing these things. She's obviously evil. She tries to, get it on with Perrin, even though Perrin doesn't want to. And Fael gets all jealous on it. And instead of, sorting these things out, or talking about, sorting these things out, it just becomes like Perrin is a poor victim who doesn't understand like women and what. And I was like, it's an unnecessary plotline at all. Like, right, why do that? And it feels like the only reason for it, literally the only reason for it, is to have to have more situations where you can talk, where Robert Jordan can talk about how little clothes Barry Lane is wearing and how bad that is, morally bad. And that's sort of the problem that I have with this. Is like it always feels like not characters in the book are like opposed to Barry Lane wearing whatever she wears or whatever, but it feels like Robert Jordan does not approve it, and that's like the weird bit there. Plus, as I said, the whole plotline seems to not do anything proper here. It's like, I don't know. I feel that's sort of a problem there. Like, why do that? Plus, then you have the whole idea of like the Feast of Lights, which is apparently sort of like a carnival kind of thing. And we spend a lot of time learning about how all the noble women of Carrion suddenly go all man crazy and kiss everyone, because it's all about the kissing and the cuddling. I don't know. I just really don't know at this point why we have these aspects, apart from like Robert Jordan really, really not understanding women at all. And I know it's a problem that I'm a dude who's saying that, but still, no one else seems to. So I'm here doing it. It's like it sucks. So yeah, they fooled Rand. They trick him with the cheapest trick in the book, which is like, I don't know. They show up with like a bunch of like Aes Sedai that are dressed as serving women, and then they just like block him from the power, put him in a box, drag him out of the box, out of the palace, and get on their way, and beat him every day, mornings and evenings, because they need to beat him into submission, which is, as I said, something that has like happened. I think it's become more pronounced. I spoke about it in the last video. It's become more pronounced in this book, especially near the end, compared to earlier books. Because at this point, it feels like the entire thing is just about like raw dominance and beating down our positions. It like all of the way it happens and is treated in this book, right? Because we have that point where, he's just like beaten into submission, or is supposed to be beaten into submission for Elida, which doesn't work. Then we have the whole thing with the like weird like fight for dominance between Berlin and Fail. Then we have the whole like when they're marching off to find Rand, when you have the conflict between those two maidens of the spear, Zulin and I forgot the other one's name, and you have all these places where it's all just about like browbeating people into submission, and that wasn't the case before. And I don't know why it suddenly is like all about that. And you have like the same thing suddenly happening with Elaine and Nynaeve, and in a way Elaine and Nynaeve on the one hand against Egwene, but it's all about this like questioning like authority by just not doing stuff, and then forcing violent conflict. Like with Zulin and the other one, it's literally like they start like punching each other, and then there's maybe something going on there. And then you have the same thing with Soralia and Amis, who have, well, they fight it out, or not fight it out, by drinking water apparently and talking about things over, which is fine. But suddenly, and I don't get it, but why that is the case, but like from the middle of this book on, suddenly all is just about like, it's just like one huge pissing contest, basically. As soon as two characters walk into a room, they enter like this like, I'm more powerful than you thing. And I'm like, wow, what changed? Why suddenly the focus on this? Then there's another thing, which is just bad writing. So the Elida's Aes Sedai, the Tower Aes Sedai are on their way back. They want to sacrifice Gawain, and get him killed by the Shido. Savannah, obviously, because, she's also evil, is like, yeah, fuck that. I'll just take everyone and kill all the Aes Sedai and take Rand for myself because I want more revenge. She also... Maybe this will actually play a role later on. Otherwise, it's one of the weirdest things ever. So she got given this, magic cube of something, which I assume is some sort of ter'angreal. And she got given that by a mysterious wetlander, which I assume is one of the Forsaken. At this point, probably either the Samael or Dimandred, because those seem to be the only, or maybe the Osangar, is that his name? The other guy from, the beginning who got revived. One of those, she got given that magic box to use on Rand. She doesn't do that. And then we have that battle, and then all is over, and she decides to just not use the box. So, does the box show up again later on? Will it ever play a role, or is this just, something unnecessary? I think that's one of the largest problems I have with developed with this series at this point, that I have no trust in Robert Jordan. I'm sitting if this were another author that I have a bit more trust for, it doesn't have to be Stephen Erickson, could be anyone else, right? If that magic box gets mentioned twice, it's a bit it's a bit of that Chekhov's gun kind of thing. It's it shows up, it's a magic item that was given to someone. And then it just doesn't show up again, or the character decides to not use it. I would think that it will come up later on in a different situation for a different reason. Because I trust authors, and I have lost I've lost any trust. I've lost all trust in Robert Jordan to do anything right at this point. I will continue reading, of course, but I've lost any trust that he'll actually be able to handle any of the things that he plans to do, any of the ideas that he has, and there are clearly good ideas in these books. Don't get me wrong; there are still clearly good ideas, but I've lost I've lost all trust that he can actually come through on any of those. It just does not seem to work. There's all these thrown random things thrown in there. And I'm maybe it'll show up again, maybe it won't. Who fucking cares? And that's the problem. It's because I can't trust the author at this point. I can't create any attachment to any of the characters, even if I wanted to, right? Not that those characters are very likable, none of them really are. But because I don't think anything meaningful will ever happen with any of them. They won't change as characters, unless maybe for the worse. And if they change, it's usually not because it's a change that makes sense. It's more suddenly Robert Jordan decides that he needs the character to be different, and he just flicks a switch, and suddenly the character is differently. Acts differently, thinks differently, and so forth. And that's all that will happen. So I'm why do I even bother? Why do I even care what happens with these characters? I'll just sit back and let the whole thing flow past me. And maybe there'll be a few really cool scenes, because sometimes there are fun and cool scenes in there. They're just very, very rare. And then I'll, just... Afterwards, I'll just, say, yeah, I've finished it, I've read it, it sucks. Because right now, the whole series, I don't give ratings, right? But this is not, at this point, it is one of the worst things in, epic fantasy that I've ever read. If not the worst. I mean, I've only read 2 books of Shannara, and I've only read 1 Sword of Truth book. And yes, Sword of Truth is more horrifying, I think. It's more egregious, but... I wouldn't even say Shannara is worse than Wheel of Time at this point, but at least Shannara is just, inane. But this is actually way worse. So yeah, there we are. The, Perrin and gang follow Rand and the Aes Sedai. They meet Perrin's crew plus the other Aes Sedai gang, the Salidar Aes Sedai gang, who is now firmly under the control of those 2 sisters who just took over for no fucking reason whatsoever. And they try to bully Perrin, who kind of sort of ignores them. Then, well, it comes to that huge battle. And this is once again one of those things that doesn't make a lot of sense. So basically, and this is like the weird bit, right? So they start the battle, and it may just kill a lot of people. And then out of nowhere, Mazrim Time and the Black Tower dudes show up and slaughter everyone with magic. At the same time, Rand, through his own capabilities, manages to free himself out of that box and start doing stuff and takes over again. So it doesn't even feel, and this is the weird bit, it doesn't even feel like Rand gets rescued by other people. Because at this point it feels almost like that Rand could have just done the whole thing by himself. However, we have Mazrim Time and the Black Tower, the Ashaman, doing their thing for the first time, which is we have high caliber battle magics out there. They don't have the prohibitions. They are not, banned, prohibited from hurting people with magic, attacking people with magic, using magic as a weapon. They can do that. I mean, technically Aes Sedai are not allowed to do that, but apparently whipping people with magic is totally fine. Unless you argue that at least 2 of those 3 in that whipped him, which is Galena and Katarina, are both Black Aja. And Black Aja obviously can do these kind of things because, we know. Who knows? But apart from that, what we get is a lot of mass murder. And I want to talk about that for a bit. I have general thoughts on the matter that I'll probably put in a video in the next couple of days. Maybe it's because, politics and world history and stuff happening right now that I'm more focused on that kind of thing. But basically what happens is they just kill thousands of people. And at the end of the day, Rand is like, you know what? Yeah, it sucks, but I have to be hard, so fuck them all. Let's just kill thousands of people with magic in a way that they have basically it's weapons of mass destruction. Let's just kill them with weapons of mass destruction. And Rand is like, yeah, you know what? I'm the hero. I'm the Dragon Reborn. I have to be this hard. I have to do this. And no, you don't. Plus, maybe you should actually have a, meaningful or whatever, emotional or moral thoughts on the matter. But we don't get that kind of thing because, yeah, we don't. And that's a bit that I really, really hate. I mean, maybe we'll see more positive things, or any form of talking about it in, the next book. But once again, I don't trust Robert Jordan to deliver on any of that. But basically, I would expect the good guys, his set of friends, to say, fuck Rand, you just mass murdered hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of people that you did not actually have to mass murder. It's now I want to drive them away. I want to use shock and awe tactics, and I'll use them and I'll just hunt them down and be evil. I'm not evil, but because I have to, I'll be hard. And there's never any argument about whether that is a good idea or not. There's never anything of that. It's no, Rand decides, so it's justified, and it happens. And then we have mass murder. I'm no, you know what? That sucks. That's really not a good way to talk about that sort of thing. It's yeah, if there is some sort of war, there will be decisions that cost human lives, and some of them will be less than stellar decisions, but I assume that the people making those decisions, I hope the people making those decisions do kind of have some moral cost to that. The idea of we've spoken about that in other books. Malazan does this a lot. It's there is always the problem that if you commit violence, it takes a cost on you, the person who does the killing, just as much, or not just as much, but in a different way than it costs. There's trauma connected to committing violence just as much as to suffering from violence, and that whole part of it is just completely ignored. Now, I don't want to do the armchair psychologist kind of thing here, but the fact that we don't have that in here, and it is written by someone who actually was a soldier in a war, is something that I find disturbing. So yeah, the book ends with Rand forcing all these Aes Sedai to swear fealty to him. by, well, main force once again. Well, magical main force, but still main force, which kind of like wraps up this entire book, which at the end of the day is all about who gets to be boss hog or top lobster by, overawing, browbeating the others into submission and nothing more. And that is just really rubbing me the wrong way. Because, it sucks. As an idea, it sucks. I mean, if you want to make a story with the moral that this is, whatever, bad or whatever, and has a lot of cost, then I'm fine with it. But to just the world is all about, who can overawe who by main force. That's a very specific worldview, and one that I personally don't subscribe to. I know it's kind of hard to say that these days, where apparently a lot of people still believe in that, but that's sort of the point that I find so annoying with it. It's like, yeah, that's just how it is. It's real. You have to be real about these kind of things. Women want to be dominated. Other countries want to be dominated. It's all about fucking domination. And no, it's not. Especially, it doesn't have to be. And that's part of what makes this book so annoying. I mean, this is one of the second longest book in the entire series. But basically, nothing really happens. Basically nothing happens. When we look at the story, what happened in, plot-wise, in the entire story, it is basically Rand hangs around in Camelin until a lot of Aes Sedai show up. Rand decides to flee those Aes Sedai to Cairhien, gets trapped by the other bunch of Aes Sedai, sort of frees himself, and there's a bit of mass murder. At the same time, everyone else is trying to maneuver and intrigue around, and not much happens. Oh, and yeah, Egwene gets made Amyrlin's seat out of nothing. Out of nowhere. And that's the entire plot. That's all of it. The rest is just, wanking around. Or maybe the start of starting an actual magic school is maybe another bit, but apart from that, nothing happens in these books. In this book, that's minimal plot for one of the longest in page count, biggest books of the series. In the entirety of Eye of the World, the first part all the way until they leave Emond's Field, or maybe Baerlon. There's more action and more actual events there than in all of this. And at the same time, it doesn't feel like, I'm getting to know these characters better. There's no more insight, more all kinds of moments and stuff that would explain or, this slowing down of pace. No, it's just endless, meaningless, pages full of nothing, of nothingness. It's we get longer descriptions of stuff, but those descriptions don't add up to a coherent world. We get meaningless, moral, teachings on how to run a marriage, which are bad, truly bad, and stuff that was built up before doesn't show up again. The entire book over, there's no fucking mention of any consequences for Rand, bale-firing all kinds of crap, to hell at the end of Fires of Heaven. After being repeatedly warned at the beginning of Fires of Heaven. There's no consequences here. It just feels like there's consequences when it is convenient. It's I don't want you to use this spear, and you can just pull it out of your arse, and I can't use balefire because it's dangerous. Then next scene you want to use balefire, suddenly you can just do it and just blow things up and no one cares. That's part of what made me really annoyed with this one. I think at the end of the day, Shadow Rising is and remains the best book of the bunch so far, because it broke up the structure. It gave Perrin an actually interesting, arc and stuff in the Two Rivers. It had some really cool scenes, like the Rand remembering all the Aiel backstory stuff. That was actually solid writing. That was fine. But since then, nothing really happened except, Robert Jordan being more in your face with his fucked up views on gender interactions. And I'm why? I really, really, really hope that the next one, Crown of Swords, will be better in these kind of things. Because right now, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, it's like, why do people love these books? What's wrong with people over the age of 13 when they love these books? Seriously. I don't get it. I truly don't get it. So yeah, basically, I did not like this book. Basically, the ending is fucked up. The fact that mass murder just happens and then it ends with like Rand just like dominating other people to all hell, and that's good, is not a good look. Yeah, it's a bit of like a what the fuck book. It could, like, the entire book could have been dropped. Not much would have lost. We wouldn't have lost much, I think. And that's sort of where I have the biggest issue, that there is no like development in characters or anything, and that's bad. All right, I'm done with this for today. I'll start Lord of Chaos. I'm done with Lord of Chaos. I'll start Crown of Swords next week. I'll get through the entire fucking thing next week, I promise. We'll get this thing done by Easter, or shortly before Easter, or shortly thereafter, but end of April, this thing is over. I promise. All right, have a great weekend, y'all. See ya. Cheers.